First presenter for our session is Professor Caxton Siu from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. I understand that there are three core researches for your research, but you are going to be the presenter for your research today. So you can start your presentation and you can share your PowerPoint, with us.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So today, first of all, I need to thank for inviting me to this excellent workshop. And so I learned a lot from the first two sessions, especially about the situation of Korea and Japan. And in this presentation, we have a paper talking about a double-edged migration development nexus, manufacturing political consent and restricting migrant agency in Japan's temporary migration policy. And well, there are a lot of acronyms because the Japan's temporary migration program has changed over the past 30 years many times, and also the names have changed. So there are a lot of acronyms. So I put it here for your reference because on and off I will use some of the acronyms. Okay. So the organization of my presentation is I would first of all talk about a little bit about some of the historical background about Japan's temporary migration policy, and then we talk a little bit about the current state of the research and the research question, and then we will have some overview about the labor migration to Japan. And then I will focus more on the temporary labor migration under the TITP system. Especially, we will focus on about the evolution, the sixth part of the presentation, the evolution of the TITP system, especially about the how the political discourse and the policy debate evolved during the development of the TITP system. So first of all, actually, Japan in the post-war era was once conceived as a negative case of labor migration. But now, with about 2 million migrants, actually Japan is now on its way to become a new destination of labor migration in Asia. And Japan's current migration policies are similar to those of other leading economies, followed by similar consequences, in particular migrants' marginal political and social status. And I suppose a lot of us here know that there are 4 main migrant groups in Japan. Okay, first of all, it's a highly skilled one, and the second one is the status migrant seeking for permanent residence, especially the spouses of Japanese citizens. And the third one is the foreign students and foreign nationals visiting the family. And the final one is those lesser skilled migrant workers. They only have temporary work permits and have a lot of restrictions. So this is a very rough overview for the foreign nationals in Japan. As you can see that the number of the foreign employees actually tripled over the past 10 to 12 years. Okay, reaching about 1.4 million in official figures, and maybe the actual number is approaching to 2 million. Okay, and in particular, we can see that the technical intern training has been expanding quite a lot. Okay, and in terms of the research state and the research question, previous research question focused more on about why migration policies in Japan remain reserved for entry of foreign workers, especially researchers usually ask why Japan does not display more active and open policies, and why despite a severe demand for labor, numbers of migrant workers are comparatively low. But there is one major question that didn't ask over the past year is that why the Japanese policymakers opt to put the temporary labor migration under the guise of technology transfer. Okay, that means why did the Japanese government conceal its side door for temporary labor migration behind the way of technology transfer? For the previous research, actually, most of the perspectives focus on, for example, the power of different national bureaucracies and ideological fermentation, and some of them focus more on the anti-immigrant attitudes and fear of some foreigners' crime. And the research also predominantly focused on long-term migration while neglecting temporary migrants. And actually, the TITP system only studied very recently, okay, due to increasing temporary migrants and also a lot of reports, international criticism about human rights violation. And the concept of technology transfer actually echoed with one of the main concepts about migration development nexus. And the main argument for migration development nexus is that low-income countries will benefit by sending more workers abroad. It is somehow portrayed as a kind of rosy picture, saying that okay, once the sending country send out their migrants to the receiving countries, especially to more technologically advanced countries, it will resolve both the win-win situation. On the one hand, the sending countries can get some technological transfer. On the other hand, the receiving countries can resolve their labor shortage problem and also can have more international collaboration. But actually, what we found in the Japan's case is quite interesting. And we found that actually this kind of migration development nexus argument actually only cover one side of the situation, which is talking about the technological transfer. And actually, when we ask more critically about this kind of discourse, actually we found that this kind of discourse is a kind of politically manufactured concept between different politically interest groups inside Japan, and resulting in negative signs about restricting migrants a lot of rights, especially in terms of their voice and the exit. Okay, so here we try to argue that actually the concept of development through migration was successfully advanced by business interest group and was accepted by a lot of stakeholders as a kind of morally superior argument, which weakened the opposition against lesser skilled migrant labor among fetal groups. Okay, so I will detail more about this later in my presentation. And most of the research material in this presentation and in this paper comes from our analysis of the past and the current policies and some of the legal texts and some public commentaries. Okay. So, some very general overview about labor migration to Japan. I suppose most of us here are experts. Okay, so I will quickly go through it. So, with this picture, we can see that actually the foreign nationals in Japan increased over the past 30 years. Okay, and two nationalities deserve quite a lot of concern here. The first one is the Brazilian one. Previously, Brazilian nationals are the major foreign nationals in Japan. But now, actually, the Chinese nationals is rising. But more importantly, the Vietnamese just increased dramatically over the past years. A major difference between the Brazilian migrants are that they are seeking for long-term residency, while for the Chinese migrants, actually they are more diverse in legal terms, and only 1/3 of them are being students and interns. Okay, student interns. As for the Vietnamese one, actually they grow. The number of them rise up drastically in recent years, surpassing the Brazilians in 2016, and a lot of them are actually refugees. Okay. And some of them more recently, they are the students and also the technical interns, composing half of the Vietnamese in Japan. So that's why actually with Chinese and Vietnamese migrants, more recently, most of them are interns and also students. That's why we need to look more closely into the technical intern training system here. And about the temporary labor migration regime under the technical intern trainee program, actually, we all know that this program undergo different phases. Okay, but with official figures, we can see that there is since 1998. Okay, the start of the most primitive version of the program. It continued to rise until it peaked 2008. Okay, but after that, it slumped a little bit, and then not recently, it also revived again, especially towards 2020, because there is a constant labor shortage in the preparation of the Tokyo Olympic. Okay, so putting all these into some kind of framework, actually, one of the framework we borrow is from Albert Hirschman's Exit, Voice, and Loyalty. Because we found that when we analyze the TITP system over the years, we found that there are several features of the migrants. First of all, these migrants, as some of the presenters, for example, Professor Kondo told us that migrants are not very capable of language, especially in Japanese. Okay, so in this way, actually, migrants are voiceless. That means they lack of voice, especially when they were in conflict with their employers. And on the exit side, until very recently, migrants are not allowed to change their jobs or place of residence. This also restricts the migrants' exit choice, especially in changing jobs between employers. Okay, and especially for the part about loyalty, we found that there are quite different restrictions and also demands from the supervision organization or approving organization, requiring trainees have to eager to listen to or follow all instruction at the accepting organizations. In this way, actually, we can see that this kind of program actually restricted the trainees' exit and punishing them by not allowing them to have any voice, to voice out their opinion, and also demand them to have some kind of loyalty inside the system. So this is also another figure showing that migrants, especially the technical intern trainees, they do not have the exit right. You can see that from this figure, on this chart, the technical trainees are very clustered in, for example, in IT and also in this is a ratio, okay, in Himi, okay. So actually, with this, we can see that actually because they cannot change their job and also they cannot change their residence. So it restrict not only restrict their exit option, but also restrict their movement. Okay. There are, I suppose most of you know that the TITP system is also heavily criticized internationally because of a lot of labor right violation inside the workplace. One type of very common violation is the delay of the payment and also of the non-payment, and also there are a lot of foil and illegal employment practices inside the workplace. There are also other violations. For example, there are a lot of health, safety, and health issues inside the workplace. Because of these kind of exploitation and also escalated concern, actually the TITP system in 2016 has some kind of major overhaul. Okay, trying to have some more. Trying to protect more about these migrants. I will later talk a little bit more about this. But more importantly here, we need to understand that there are different phases of the system and different versions over the past few years. Okay, and with this, we can see that since 1990, the system actually undergone at least 4 major reforms. Okay. And in each of the reform, they have expansion and some of the incremental reform. Okay. So then it goes to the core part about the evolution of this system. So for this system, we can, in this paper, we argue that actually the system is a kind of bipolar of the, a kind of accommodation for different stakeholders and political interest groups inside Japan. And this kind of system actually try to address two public concerns. One is about the labor shortage in Japan in the 1980s and the 1990s. Another concern is about the illegal immigration. Actually, before the official launch of the very primitive version of the program in 1990, actually we even inside the government, for example, the Ministry of Labor actually proposed in 1988 try to put the labor migration, try to have labor migration by permitting highly qualified job seekers, for example, foreign graduates of university degrees in Japan, and also former industrial trainees to stay working in Japan. But actually at that time, it was strongly against by the Ministry of Justice, and it was stalled. It was not until 1990 then this kind of request was initiated by the two major business associations inside Japan, and then it somehow the trick is that the two business associations try to use the argument that they try to use the argument that actually by importing lesser skilled migrants into Japan, it can have more international contribution for Japan to other countries, and also can teach and train for qualification for those sending countries. So in this way, by putting it this way, actually it undermines quite a lot of opposition for this kind of imported migrant scheme, especially for the lesser skilled migrant. Okay, but of course there are local opposition, especially from the labor unions. Okay, but in the 1990s, because the labor union increasingly become weaker and weaker, and even within them there are different fractions. One fraction tried to agree to have more higher skilled migrants to be imported into Japan, but there are also other fractions opposing this kind of scheme for the reason of human violation of those migrants. Okay, so in order to reconcile, or in order to resolve this stalemate situation, the governing Liberal Democratic Party at that time tried to intervene into the situation by setting up a committee to investigate the foreigner problem. And most importantly, they tried to come down into this kind of industrial trainee system, and by giving this kind of trainee some resident status. In this way, the LDP was able to present the system as a kind of solution, first of all, to labor shortage, to accommodate the business interests. But on the other hand, they also try to accommodate the labor unions' opposition by promise to remove incentive for Japanese business to employ migrants illegally. So in this way, we can see that there is a kind of a morally superior argument formulated under or manufactured during the process. So it kickstarts the whole technical training program. After that, we see that there are different incremental reforms. These incremental reforms are most of them are trying to expand the quota for those small and medium-sized enterprise, and also try to have more exemption and relaxation for the quotas, and also the length of the trainees to be stayed in Japan. Okay, so in this way, we can see that actually these incremental reform was not just a kind of political contest between the political interest stakeholder inside Japan, but there are other new agencies coming into process. For example, after so many years of having foreign migrants into Japan, some of the migrant association, migrant NGOs also established, and also the United States report on trafficking also have played a role here, and trying to push the Japanese government to improve its existing system. So that's why in 2016 we found that it is the first time that the Japanese government have a bill trying to protect the migrants. So we can see that over the years, actually the dynamics also change. There are international agencies actively intervening in the process, and also local civil society organization also has been formed, trying to give some voice to protect the migrants. Okay. So as a whole, we can see that this is a very highly simplified version of the TITP system nowadays. Okay. It is. I don't think I have a lot of time to detail them bit by bit because all three of the collaborators in this paper spent a lot of time trying to figure out different mechanisms with different organizations and with different sending countries organizations. But what we want to argue is that this kind of transnational institutional embeddedness of the TITP system is actually the byproduct of the attempt of different Japanese policymakers, interest groups, trying to reconcile the lesser skilled labor migration into the small medium enterprises with the concern over illegal migration, deteriorating labor standards, and illegal immigration voiced by the opponents of labor migration. And by framing the temporary migration as a means of technology transfer, it was made possible to the labor unions who actually fear that local Japanese workers will lose their labor standard, and also the migrants will lose their human rights during the process. So coming back to the title of this paper, actually why we say that it is a kind of double-edged migrant development nexus, because the migrant development nexus concept actually just give out some kind of rosy picture to depict that there should be some win-win situation among the sending country, the receiving country, and also the migrants themselves. But actually, what we found that this kind of nexus has good sides and bad side. The good side is that it can resolve the problem about the labor shortage in the receiving countries, but actually it was not articulated or somehow being concealed by the Japanese government in name of technology transfer. But on the other hand, the negative side is that a lot of the migrants agency has been restricted, especially in the formative year before 2016. Those migrants, they don't have voice, they don't have exit option, and they were being demanded to have some loyalty to the approving organizations. And so I think that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Professor Chu. You actually have 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, but thank you for being exact time. Right, so shall we move on to our second presentation? Our second presenter is Dr. Mi-Soo Kim and Professor Anna Kim. So now we are moving on to a Korean case from Japan. So please start your presentation, and you have 25 minutes.
Thank you, Professor Shin, for introducing us to the conference. And first of all, we'd like to thank Dr. Yoon for hosting this international conference and giving us a chance to present our articles. Actually, this article has been already published, but in this kind of international conference, I think it'll be our pleasure to share what we have found in Korean society. The title of our, can you hear me? Okay, fine. Okay, thank you. The title is The Impact of Multicultural Family Children's Social Service Utilization on Their Self-Esteem. So our major concern was what is their self-esteem level, and whether there are many services actually provided to them, and whether there's service, when they use the service, their self-esteem goes up or down, or it has no impact at all. In particularly, we'd like to see whether this service impact on their multiculturalism, and this multiculturalism affect their self-esteem. We'd like to share with us what we have found in this matter. Okay. The contents is introduction, theoretical and methodology findings, and you may see on the screen. Introduction first. As you may aware, everybody aware, Korean society becomes multicultural. In the year 2018, foreigners consist of 2.1 million, which is, we have 500 million population in total. This is a 0.04% of our total population. In particular, as you may aware, marriage immigrants, there are many rural males who cannot find their spouses, so international marriage is now very common in urban as well as rural areas. And marriage immigrants and naturalized citizens, the number has grown from 108,000 in 2028 to 344,000, which means that in 10 years, in the year 10 years, the number grows like over twice, less than twice. It's very fast growing. And the children, they are mostly born in Korea. The number of children is 238,000, which consists of 3% out of all Korean children. 3%, we think that is quite high. It's getting larger, and our concern is, since our Korean society becomes multicultural, we do not prepare well, because Korean society is so unique. We use only one language and one ethnic city. So having other people from other countries is new to us. Nowadays, it's a little bit slightly different. So there are many marital conflict and family violences and discrimination. In particularly, children, they suffer, although they were born in Korea, they suffer from various difficulties such as prejudices, bullying, identity crisis, etc. Previous research talks about children of immigrant background. So if they accept both native culture and immigrant culture, they are healthier. This means that if they are bicultural, their mental health, their well-being is better. And so this is why we need to examine whether biculturalism has positive impact on children in Korea also. The previous research is mostly done in the US. So they studied, their sample was like Latino children, or children from Asian countries, but our children that we have interested in is different. They are not immigrants. They're Korean-born nationals, but they're one of their parents are from other countries. So since we have a kind of unique situation, we need to see that whether the previous research findings is applicable to Korea or not. In other aspects, and as you may aware, also there are many social support for the children and family of multicultural, with multicultural. As yet, there are much research done in regards to whether this support has positive impact on their families as well as their children or not. So what we would like to do is we need to examine the impact of social policy on their well-being. So our purpose of the study is aims at examining the impact of it, like I said before, service utilization and multiculturalism, the impact of both of these on their self-esteem. Firstly, we'd like to examine children's multiculturalism, how much they are exposed to their foreign-born parents' culture, mostly mothers, how they know their mother's mother tongue and mother culture. And secondly, we'd like to examine how much they utilize services, welfare services. And lastly, we'd like to see whether their service utilization impact on their self-esteem, and does multiculturalism mediate the impact. I'll explain this about this in more detail later. Theoretical background, self-esteem. This concept is quite widely known and everybody knows about what it is. But in regards to multicultural families, children, and the research findings are not consistent, meaning that some research says that children from multicultural family background has higher self-esteem, while other findings, other research says that their self-esteem is lower than Korean natives. So we are not so sure whether they're healthier, they're proud of themselves, or they're kind of ashamed of themselves. So we need to find out. And components of that affect self-esteem. There are many actually factors of affecting self-esteem. Much research has done with this issue, so I don't want to restate this. You can see on this slide, and I'll move to the next. And service utilization and self-esteem. This is the issue that few research has been done, so that's why we chose this issue. Although government spend a lot of money on the policies, so but we are not so sure whether the policy is effective or not. So the component of service, there are many types of services, like physical activities, artwork, counseling, therapists. There are many. We have a multicultural family center in every corner of this city. But up until now, there are no study has been done on the relationship between these two. So we'd like to focus on this. And multiculturalism and self-esteem. Like I said, multiculturalism is one's competency, meaning that if you are bicultural or if you know 2 languages or 3 languages, you have better quality, or you have better chance of being hired or being promoted, or etc. So it may, previous research always shows that if you are multicultural, bicultural, you are healthier and you have higher self-esteem. So But biculturalism, in other words, has to do with, in here, multi is not multi, it's like mostly two, mothers and fathers. So biculturalism has to do with the higher self-esteem is our hypothesis. So methodology. Data and the sample. We used 2015 National Survey on Multicultural Family. This data set is quite highly qualified, a national sample, and sample size was quite huge. But we only chose children of marriage immigrants and naturalized Korean citizens. Children, number of the sample size were around 5,000, aged 9 through 17, because if you are too young, it is hard for them to answer the questions. That's why we only chose this age. Hypothetical model, like I said, service utilization, whether this service utilization affect their self-esteem. But we'd like to see whether this service utilization go via multiculturalism, meaning that if you use services, you are proud of your mother's culture and your mother's language, and then this biculturalism or multiculturalism affects your self-esteem, so you feel better with yourselves. So we'd like to see this hypothesis. We'd like to test this model. Our dependent variable is self-esteem. We used Rosenberg's scale. Unfortunately, the data set only used 3 items instead of 10 items. Cronbach's alpha was quite high. Independent variable is service utilization. Service utilization, there are like 7 services in the data set, but we only chose 3 because other services has a low factor loading score. So we used the factor analysis for this. Mediating variable is multiculturalism of children. What is multiculturalism in this data set? First is fluency is foreign-born parents' language. First one is language. Second one is whether they're proud or they feel okay when they say that my mother or one of my parents is from other countries. It's more like self-identity or shamefulness, I would say. So we like to, we use these 2 scales to test, to measure multiculturalism. Control variables, there are many actually control variables to see the impact of self-esteem. Socio-demographic variables, you may use in many research, and family, school, and social factors. I'll explain this factors a little bit later in our tables. And analytical tools, we use descriptive statistics, and to measure the mediating impact, we used Barron and Kenny's 3-step regression analysis. We could use actually Amos and like structural equation model, but instead of doing that, we use Barron and Kenny's. This analysis is much, I think, is simpler. And to check the mediating impact, we use Sobel test. Findings: social demographic characteristics of children from multicultural family backgrounds, and their female and male, the proportion percentage is similar. Age, mean age was 12, and region more urban, 57 versus 40%. Household monthly income is around 3 million. I think this 3 figure is a little bit higher than we expected. Foreign parents nationality, mostly China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, followed by Vietnam, Philippines, and Japan, etc. Foreign-born parents' gender is mostly 2% is female, meaning that there are many females who came to Korea to get married. And national basic livelihood, if you are very poor, absolutely poor, government helps you out, and there are 7% of recipients. This 7% is, I think, higher than average Korean children, because Korean children out of maybe 1 or 2 out of 100 may be a recipient. Major characteristics of children: family factor, school factor, social factor, multicultural factor, and self-esteem. We show just descriptive statistics, how much they converse with their parents, and whether they're happy with, satisfied with their parents, and parents are concerned about their children. And we check the mean score, and a little bit surprisingly, the mean score wasn't that low, lower than expected. And in particular, self-esteem, the mean, the scale was 1 to 5. The average was a 3.85. I think this self-esteem level is not too low. I think it's above the midpoint. And multicultural factor, language fluency is very, I think, low. It's below midpoint. So meaning that if they don't know Chinese or Vietnamese, and they only know Korean and maybe English. And multicultural identity, whether they're proud of, they don't mind if one of their parents are from other country. The average was 3.46. This figure also, I think, is a little bit higher than expected. Service utilization and self-esteem. Welfare service utilization, there are like 4 welfare services: multicultural family center, after school center, and youth support center. They used this service, but only, except after school, most of them, below 40%, use this services. In multicultural schools, we have Rainbow School and multicultural prep school and alternative school, and there are only few children use this. They go to this school. And lastly, education on parents' culture they learn parents' language and parents' culture from other country, and there are only like less than 10% having these services. Correlation matrices, I think, is I would like to skip this, and the findings of Baron and Kenny's regression analysis. There's 3 steps. The first step is mediating factor. Which variable is affecting mediating factor? The second step is accept mediating factor, the impact of independent variables on self-esteem. We examine this on the second step, and the last step is every variable included and see if the variables are significant. Our major concern with interest was multiculturalism, whether this multiculturalism affect self-esteem. Our major interest is service utilization, whether they use the service, their self-esteem goes up or down. And we found that only parents' education on parent culture, if they use this service, know their Vietnamese and their foreign parents' culture, their self-esteem goes up. And multiculturalism, if they're bicultural, their self-esteem was higher. This is, so we kind of partially our hypothesis was supported, I would say. And other significant variables was gender, age, region, and monthly income. And higher income, the higher the self-esteem. And interestingly, gender, male has higher self-esteem than female children. And age, if age goes up, meaning that you're reaching teenagers, and then your self-esteem goes down. I think this phenomena is not only for these children. Our Korean national also, this shows that if you if you are older, your self-esteem goes down. I think it's because of school, as you may know. And family factor, family factor is quite, all of three scale measurements were significant. But the most significant factor on self-esteem was school factor, school adjustment. If you are better at school, or you adjust school better, your self-esteem goes up. Okay, let me conclude our research. A summary first. This study examined whether service utilization affects children from multicultural families through their service utilization. Oh, I didn't, in this slide, I didn't present the Sobel test outcomes, but we found that Sobel test was significant, meaning that multiculturalism is significant mediator of self-esteem. When children utilize welfare services as their educational services, their multiculturalism level increased and it boosts their self-esteem, meaning that if they use services and their self-esteem goes up. And if after they use services and they're more biculturally exposed, then their self-esteem goes up. Many factors affected self-esteem, and the impact of school adjustment was strongest. Family factor also was significant, like gender, age, region, and monthly income. And social, but unlike we expected, we hypothesized social discrimination did not affect their self-esteem. This is a little bit unexpected outcomes. Policy implication. We have three policy implications. First one is we need to devise ways to raise multiculturalism, because if they're multicultural, their self-esteem goes up. So to do this, at school, multicultural education courses are needed. I think there are some schools which is emphasis on multicultural education, and there are even teachers who are teaching foreign languages. And various cultural events may ease prejudice against them. At school, we can have like Vietnamese night or a Philippine night, and children, even the Korean nationals can understand other culture. An opportunity to expose multicultural experiences are also needed. I think it's the same as the second one. And second policy implication is we need to provide language education to children, because language is culture. If you know the language, you are more exposed to their culture also. So it raises their pride in their parents' country, and after-school centers can offer language courses. But I think there aren't many Koreans who can teach a language. So I think parents from other country can be a teacher. In fact, there are many, actually, some centers, the mothers actually teaches their own languages to Koreans as well as their children. Lastly, we need to focus more on teenagers, because like I said, if their age goes up, their self-esteem goes down. And we need to more focusing on children from low-income families to raise their self-esteem. So we need to help children understand their emotions and develop into interactional skills at home, because our findings was that family factor was the most very important factors. All the measurements scales was significant. In addition, female children's self-esteem needs social attention, because compared to male children, female children's self-esteem was lower. So we need to have more focusing on female instead of male. And lastly, I would like to talk about the limitations of the study. Since we have used the data set, so there are many variables that we'd like to use. In particular, this national survey was very, very, very powerful and wonderful. But since this survey's sample was immigrants from very many countries, so you have to translate into like 12 languages. So this is main obstacles of the survey. And so many detailed information on children's multiculturalism was missing, and their more detailed service utilization was also missing. So if somebody has more opportunities, this detailed information should be included in the survey. And we need further information on parents' interest in culture and their awareness in culture. So we do not have much information on their parents' interest, parent side interest in culture and awareness. So we have this variable also. And in regards to service utilization, since the question was quite simple, we need to have more detailed measurement scale in the future survey. That's it for my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Thank you for your very detailed research, and it was very informative. Right, so we now have about 40 minutes left. So I think we have plenty of time for discussion and some additional questions from other audiences. Right, so Dr. In-Sun, could you have about like 20 minutes for your discussion? Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm In-Sun, postdoc fellow at Korea University. And two studies have very interesting and have significant potential for our immigration literature. And so first, let me talk about the first study, Dr. Siu's study. It's very interesting topic, deal with very interesting topic, and this study actually illustrate how labor migration program in Japan has been established. It's particularly focusing on policy making process as a compromise among the interest groups. Right? So I think it pretty deal with the important topic in terms in that it shows how migration policies are actually socially constructed as a compromise among complex interests of business, labor, and the government. So I think it's particularly helpful to understand how the immigration policy in other Asian countries, those who have a high level of social hostility and experience the labor shortage. So they have been how other countries actually made their policy. So regarding this study, I have actually 3 questions. So first is, are you usually deal with the temporary migration regime, but I think that regime might be can be properly understood by the relation with other immigration-related policies. Like, for instance, in Korea, the labor shortage actually has been substituted by other policies like ethnic Korean abroad migration policy. So I wonder, how about Japan? I think Japan has other some immigration-related policies. So how can we understand the policy-making process of temporary migration regime in relation to some similar policies? And my second question is like, so I think you seem to suggest that the Japan's temporary labor migration regime has been lasting for several decades and also will be last over the next decade, right? But I think, do you think whether the temporary labor migration regime will persist or change as the labor demand is increasing? And in case of Korea actually, as you mentioned, Korea replicated the Japanese industry training program, but later they abolished it and newly established a new law like employment permit system. I think it's partly because of the rising human rights violation and increasing demand of labor. So what do you think the Japanese temporary migration system will persist or change? And my third question is, so later part you mentioned about how TITP is embedded in the transnational institution. Could you tell me more about how that transnational relationship has been shaped? I mean, what factors actually affect that kind of the institutional embeddedness? I need more information about that. Yeah. And so next, let me talk about Dr. Kim's the research. I think her study in general examines how kind of bicultural identity mediate the effect of welfare and multicultural education on self-esteem among children of multicultural family. I know that there are tons of policies aiming at promoting social integration of immigrant families in Korea, but there is, there's much doubt about that kind of education's effectiveness. So this kind of research have very significant implication for that. Yeah. So I also have 3 questions. First of all, so I think this research need to clarify the term of multiculturalism, because I think that the ethnic identity or bicultural identity would be the better term. And so, and also, could you tell us more about like why that bicultural identity is so important in terms of immigrant incorporation? Because I think that those with the South Asian background, for them, their bicultural identity is not that good for integrating into Korean society. So in that case, how can you explain that? And also, I think you, as you mentioned, the questionnaire about the multicultural identity in the 2015 survey is quite problematic because the language fluency and their feeling on others, the designation might not actually might not reflect their own identification. So how can you like justify it? And my second question is that I think there are many criticisms that the existing policy and social program and the multicultural education in Korea it's not actually multicultural, but it's more like assimilative, right? So that means that kind of the multicultural services and program actually promote Korean identity, not the ethnic identity. So do you have any idea about that? Like, how do you support your argument against that kind of criticism? And third, I think your study seem to assume that like the multicultural families in Korea actually a singular group, but I think they consist of many heterogeneous subgroups according to like their country of origin or gender or skin color. So these factors might affect the culture, their children's the bicultural identity. Like as I said before, like I think there is a kind of hierarchy of foreigner in Korea, like mostly based on their country of origin or skin color. Like so Koreans have a different preference for the ethnicity. So how can you incorporate the factors into your model, or what do you think about that? Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Son. So those are mostly questions rather than maybe your general comments on two presentations. So answering those questions would be like another set of presentation, I guess. There are many questions, but I think it's very good question because the questions are, I think, came up, and also the questions that I had got while listening your presentations. I mean, the two of you. So I think it's better to have answers to those questions of our discussant first. Then I will transfer the mic to our floor audiences. Okay. All right. So could you start, Dr. Siu? Yeah. Could you start to answer the questions raised by Dr. Son? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insightful comments and questions. Regarding your first question about apart from the TITPC and what other related law that are also affecting in the whole policy making process, actually Japanese laws and most political actors always shy away from framing migration as really a kind of migration, okay, and try to stick to some term like, okay, leaving and entering the country, and which implies that in order to enter Japan, you have to leave first, and then, or accepting, okay. So it means that actually this kind of thinking will have some related laws that are under concern. For example, Japan's Immigration Control and Refugee Recognition Act. Okay, this is one of the very related law that because it also tried to regulate the immigration of different foreign nationals. Okay, another related law, I suppose, in every country, whenever you try to import some foreign workers, so you have to think about how to pay them, right? and also what are the labor standards. So that's why the local labor standards and also the minimum wage are also these kind of labor laws are also somehow related to this. Okay. So that's why actually it is not a static process, because over the years there are ups and downs in the local political dynamics between the business side and also the labor union side. So it will also affect the labor standards and also the changing dynamics between different interest groups. Okay, so that's why over these years we found that actually it is quite a complex process. And what I try to argue in the development of the TITP system is trying to articulate a very clearer line about how the process was developed in conjunction with other development of the legal of the law, legal development, and put more emphasis on the interaction between different actors, not just the local actors but also the international actors. I hope I answered your question in this regard. So the second question about the future of the TITP system. I have to tell you that unlike Professor Kondo in this morning think that the TITP system will withering away, I think this kind of temporary migration program will still persist in Japan for a certain while. My expectation or my prediction is that if you see most of the countries for the receiving end, actually this kind of temporary migration program exists for a long time, even within a country for internal migration. For example, my another cluster of research is try to research the internal migration in China and Japan. Even for rural to urban migration, the rural residents will sometimes have, they also only have the temporary migration permits only. They cannot have residency. So that's why I have a more pessimistic view towards this kind of changing of the system. Especially in Japan, now because of the increasing number of the foreign workers inside Japan, there is a heated debate about how to handle these foreign nationals. But more deep to the question is how to handle their citizenship right. Okay, but this is somehow very a kind of very sensitive issue in Japan. So that's why I don't think the system will change a lot in a short while. Okay. For the transnational embedded network, okay, in this paper, we only focus on the local situation about how the policy unfold over time. But in my another paper about Chinese and Vietnamese industrial trainees in Japan, actually we found that from the sending end, actually different countries have different channels in sending their industrial trainees to Japan. For example, in China, what I found is that there are some channels, not apart from the private agencies, they also have the government themselves will also have some kind of collective effort trying to organize some more highly skilled trainees to Japan, which is in big contrast with the Vietnamese one. The Vietnamese ones, most of them are undergoing through private intermediate agencies. So the consequence is that because their arrangement are different from the very beginning, their labor standards and also their down payment to leave before their departure to go to Japan will also be different. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, Dr. Kim, could you? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Son. It was really interesting question. I really liked your question, even though I don't think I can answer all of them correctly. The first question was very interesting also. Why biculturalism, and especially parents from mothers, especially from Southeast Asian background, would children like to be exposed to that culture? I don't think so either. I don't think they want to learn Vietnamese. It's really hard to learn, and like Indonesian and except English or French. I think people have hard time, children are struggling. But the reason why we chose bicultural is because bicultural works in the USA. So why not Korea? That was our first question. Would that be applicable to Korea or not? Was our curiosity. That's why I chose this topic and tested our hypothesis. But actually, as you may know, that it's been proved that, meaning that biculturalism works to boost their self-esteem. And how we accept this, or how we explain about this, that I think that's the one we need to work on in the future. And we, like you said, Professor Son, you said that we don't have biculturalism or multiculturalism. Our culture is like a similar. Come to Korea, and since you are in Korea, and you act like Korean, you speak Korean and Korean, everything Korean, and that's the point, that we need to think twice. It's not Korea centered. It should be both culture centered is our goal. Like, of course, even in the US, I think it's not melting pot also. They say it's salad. I think Dr. Yoon is the expert on this. And even Korea, we are not asking for, we are not promoting multiculturalism, we're promoting uniculturalism. So I would like to say that this is not healthy for children. For their children to be healthy, you need to accept part of your origin, which is your mother's side. And Dr. Sen, like you said, the hierarchical status in terms of their well-being and their socioeconomical situation, and in many aspects, it's not the variable that we cannot ignore. We have to have. So I think in the beginning, I controlled mother's country of origin, and I do not remember exactly, but why I include those variables, that variable is because I want to see in other research, like mothers or fathers from Western countries, they're healthier and they're better at school, and they're in many senses the outcomes are quite different from the children from whose parents are from East Asian countries, the third world country, I would say. And but I think Korea is now it's the time for us to embrace those third world country culture and language, and otherwise we would be isolated or excluded, and even East Asian countries. I mean, I hope that this won't happen, but we need to be more not far East Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, and we need to embrace all those cultures. I mean, at least we need to try. And in regards to your second question on the problem with the survey data, I totally agree with your position, but I didn't quite catch what was the main point of your second question. Can you explain it? Can you say it again, please? Thank you. Sorry.
Yep. My second question
is about data set.
Data set.
The survey, the 2015.
Yeah. So you used two questions in the 2015 survey as to measure the multicultural identity.
Mhm.
And I think two questions are quite problematic.
Ah, yeah. The measurement, yes. That point I think is also good. It's really hard to say with those two measurements. This is my multicultural, bicultural. I think you are right. So we better use term not instead of multicultural, but the one that you suggested. I think is a good point. I really appreciate your comment on that. Thank you. I don't know whether I can answer all of your questions, but this one, I actually, while we were studying, I had the same feeling. I mean, why not English? Everybody loves to be westernized, but go back to the one that we don't want to go back. I don't think it's a good way to go forward for us. Did I make myself clear? But from the research findings from the U.S. and from foreign countries, advanced countries, I realized that, like I said before, sorry, I repeat myself, accepting part of your origin is make you healthier and better in adjustment. Thank you. Dr. Yun, I want to have your comment on this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not the person to present. Sorry.
Well, I think
sorry to interrupt, but before we hand over mic to the floor, Professor Siu just mentioned and texted me that he had some additional respondents he missed when he answered the question. So could you just make it a bit brief, then we can give more time to floor.
So after several minutes, I finally come up with a more satisfied answer to Professor Song's first question about the transnational embeddedness. So I mentioned that my another research about China and Vietnam actually find out there are some institutional differences between the sending countries. And actually, this is exactly what we talk about embeddedness, because actually we are in this kind of transnational migration, especially transnational labor migration, we're handling actually two sets of the labor system. One set is from the sending country, another set is from the receiving end. Why I say so? Because for the sending country, they also have their trade union. They also have their responsible government unit. But what we found that, especially in my research about China and Vietnam, because they have their socialist origin, they're a socialist country. So that's why it is different from other, for example, from capitalist countries. And that's why in the Chinese case, the government can collaborate with local official trade union, and then to have more active role in arranging their migrants to Japan and have better protection for their workers. So that's why here we actually are handling a global migration regime and also a regional labor regime in different and local labor regime. So this is actually my main puzzle for the whole research agenda: how to have an integrated framework for the migration regime and also the different local industrial relation systems and how they interact.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Siu. Okay, so I think we need to have some time to have a question from the floor. Is there anybody who wants to give a question to one of the presenters?
Let me add some comment to the question raised by Dr. Song and answered by Dr. Kim. Professor Song raised an interesting question about the relationship between biculturalism and the self-esteem of children. I think we can find the answer to this question from the basic argument of multiculturalism. The basic argument of multiculturalism is that culture is very important part of individuals' self-concept and identity. So if we ignore or disrespect this cultural component, then we deny the existence of individual, himself or herself. So that is I think, the main reason for the relationship between biculturalism and self-esteem. So if society recognizes and respects the cultural component of these children, that it actually recognize the individual's self and identity. So if self-concept is approved and appreciated, then it will increase his self-esteem. So I think that may be the reason for the relationship. And in the West, especially in the US and Canada, there are ample research, about this relationship. And for that reason, I think Dr. Kim's, research provides us an evidence and support for more multicultural education for our children of the multicultural family. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Yoon. Yes, Professor Lan, I could see the hands up. Could you turn on the mic, please?
Sorry.
Okay.
I have a question for Professor Xu. So today you mostly talk about how the TITB program manufacture consent for the Japanese society and Japanese unions. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a bit more about how the sending society, sending government perceive such program. You kind of touch upon this point in your last comment. And I'm wondering because right now, many sending countries, including Vietnam, is trying to frame labor exports as some kind of developmental policy, to gain political legitimacy to their people, and also to create some aspiration for the migrant workers sent abroad. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on that. Thank you.
Okay. Please, the presenters, bear in mind those questions because I want to collect the questions together. Then you can answer all at the same time. Is there anybody who wants to raise a question? Yes, Professor Kondo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also asked to Dr. Xu, and your presentation mentioned about the successful argument of the technical intern system. One is technology transfer, and second is against illegal foreign workers. But I think we have training systems. Training systems is real technology transfer. But the technical intern system is reality, is cheap labors. So I don't need for transfer of technology. Training system is enough. And another point, of course, illegal, there were many illegal foreign workers. And we introduced, firstly, we introduced Japanese ancestry, Brazilian and so on. And also we introduced technical intern systems. But now we have SSW #1. This is also the temporary immigration systems. And this is different. The SSW1 persons can change the working place if there is a problem of the owner. That's a difference. But of course, SSW1 needs Japanese language or skill test. But if they worked for 3 years as technical interns, no test, they can work as SSW1. And so that's why maybe we need to broaden the scheme of SS11, and technical intern should be limited. And also, I think now technical intern system was the gate of illegal foreign workers. Many persons are escaped if there are harassment or if their working condition was totally bad. They escaped and they worked as illegal workers. So maybe technical interns' advantage is not against the illegal foreign workers at the moment. So how do you think about this point?
Okay, I think we have to have just one more final question, then give time to answer those questions to presenter. Is there anybody? Then shall we give mic to Dr. Xiu? I think you have some questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for two very critical and insightful questions. First of all, regarding Professor Lan's question about what are the perception from the sending side, I think it really depends on the level of development of the country for the sending countries. For example, when I compare China and Vietnam, actually we have to consider their position in the global production chain and also their level of development. Vietnam is much more less developed country than China. So China nowadays, they want to upgrade the industry to a more high-tech one. So that's why they perceive, according to my interview with the ministry and also some local officials, they perceive this kind of system as a way to have technological transfer. Okay, so that's why they try very hard trying to cooperate with some kind of transnational Japanese company and try to send some vocational graduates to these Japanese company, try to learn automation. But of course, this is their goodwill. But usually, according to my research findings, a lot of the Chinese trainees going to those mother companies in the Japanese factories, actually they hardly can learn a lot because, first of all, it is their language ability cannot master well in the first 2 years. Secondly, even they work in the same company, the system used in Japan are different from the system used in China. So that's why a lot of the trainees when I interview them, they always have the question in their mind, even during training. They question themselves, can those skills they learn inside Japan is transferable back to China? But for other countries like Vietnam, they are in a much lower position in the global production chain, and also for the development level, they actually perceive the TITP system as a way to earn remittance for the migrant family. It's a way to improve their local citizens' living standards. So it really depends on which country their level of development is. Okay. For Professor Kondo's question, I think I absolutely agree with you that the TITP system is a side door for cheap labor. This is the fact, we know that. But what I argue in this paper is that when a policy has to be accepted by the public, it has to have some kind of justification to pit against other oppositional discourse. And in a very early period, when the technical intern system was discussing in the late 1980s, actually both the business side and also the labor union side are also having different concern. For example, they have different concern about they will be importing a lot of low-skilled labor, and also for the labor union, they are very concerned about those human rights issues for the migrants. So in order to in order to fight against these two types of discourse. That's why it comes up with some kind of more morally superior discourse, trying to cover or to become what we call the smoke screen, to divert away for these original concern from those stakeholders. So that is the main argument. I don't dispute the fact that TITP system is a cheap labor system. Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think time's up. It's exactly, we are exactly on time, 4:10. Thank you for your participation. And I think we need to hand over our mic to Professor Yoon, that he may have some announcement or some, the comments for delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shin, for your wonderful, the chair role. And thank you for your participation in today's sessions. We'll have another interesting session tomorrow morning. And also we have arranged a special session for graduate students and recent doctors. So, we think it is important for us to provide chance and opportunities for our graduate students to become, competent future generation of researchers. And the link and password for tomorrow's conference will be different from those I have already noticed. So I will send you a new email. So please check this email, and I wish we meet again for tomorrow's session. Okay, thank you for your participation. Okay, see you tomorrow. Okay.
감사합니다.